James Dimon, David Solomon, Karen Lynch, Sundar Pichai, and Tim Cook. Besides staggering paychecks of tens of millions of dollars a year minimum, these people have something else in common, and that's the position they hold within their companies. JP Morgan Chase CEO and billionaire businessman Jamie Dimon talks about managing life and saving time for yourself to get it all done as something you can accomplish even working the toughest job. Let's get more context on what people like him can teach us as part of their brutal CEO careers. The Chief Executive Officer, or short, the CEO, a widely known term, often directly linked to power, wealth, success, a superior position in all respects. Magnates able to withstand the highest pressure, carrying responsibilities that will simply crush 99% of people. And yes, from time to time, a very unpopular title. Just think of the image of the ruthless business person who values numbers over people, cashing in million-dollar paychecks at the expense of low-wage employees. Obviously, there are differences, and regardless of how you view the CEO, good or bad, many people have the same questions. One of them being, how do top CEOs even spend their time to be and remain so successful? What do superiors of billion-dollar companies do, and how can you use that rather quickly to step up your performance? Moral debates aside for now, becoming and remaining a top executive of billion-dollar companies requires a lot. Brain power, work ethic, resilience. So no doubt there's enough for you to learn from top CEOs. Buckle your belt because we will have a look at answers and some interesting numbers right now. In 2006, Michael Porter and Nitin Noria from Harvard Business School launched a study on CEOs of particularly large corporations. Their research included 27 executives and 60,000 hours of data. Looking at how top executives allocate their time, some of the numbers aren't too surprising. For example, the CEOs only spend 5% of their time on vacation, and they even work on 70% of their vacation days, at least 2 hours a day. As for their daily operations, believe it or not, top executive work still is a people's business. The CEOs in the study spend just as much time on people and relationships as they did on reading reports and business reviews. The rest is a mix of culture, strategy, and some M&A work. Talking about people, CEOs spend more than 70% of their time in meetings of various kinds. You could almost say they're in meetings all day long. And yet, some numbers seem rather surprising, especially the thing we always like to call work-life balance. What do you think? Top executives spend maybe twice as much time on work as they do on personal life, and they work maybe 1.5 times more than they sleep? Think again, both wrong. The percentages on what we call work-life balance are by far not as bad as you may think. Sacrifice sleep? Sleep is for losers? Well, certainly not for those C-level losers, because top performers on average sleep almost as much as they work. On a daily basis, they spend 9.7 hours of their time working and almost 7 hours a night sleeping. Even personal life is not too bad, making up for 25% or 6 hours of their time spent with family and even leisure activities, from reading to complete downtime. Looking at these numbers, where does all the push towards hard work, long hours, and an insane work ethic come from? Is that a myth? No, not really. Success at executive level requires working a lot, even working long hours over the course of decades. That's a valid statement. The CEOs in the aforementioned study work almost 10 hours a day. Together with some frequent work on weekends, these CEOs were having 62.5-hour weeks. Doesn't sound too insane if you hear Elon Musk talking about 100-hour weeks, but we're talking about decades here, consistently. We've talked enough about hours. There's more to the equation. The misconception comes from a place of direct comparison. The average person defines their productive output largely by the hours they're putting in. For them, working more comes with higher productivity, and that drives the success curve, correct? Well, yes and no. Working more effectively means getting more done. However, you're comparing your standards and definition of productive work with the ones of the top CEOs. And you're probably doing so based on a wrong image of what it means to be a CEO. That being said, it cannot simply be the fact that working draining hours and sleeping less is the solution to achieve top executive success. So what's the myth? What's the truth? The key is increasing productive output both by hours and by efficiency and quality work. At a certain degree of career success, you have already put in countless of hours of work and dedication, so that's a given anyway. Instead, there's a point of becoming more and more senior in the corporation where your critical value is being compensated by pressure and responsibility, not by the mere extra hours of office work. So you cannot forget about the immense quality and consequences that your decisions are going to have. And that's essentially a big part of what CEOs are getting paid for. The entire substructure of the company, including its senior management, relies fully on your ability to cope with pressure and making a few very high-level decisions. Again, that's essentially what you are getting paid for. I was fortunate enough to meet 2 or 3 high-ranking CEOs running complex international corporations. And from what I witnessed, I can confirm they were all very aware and wise on how they invest their time. Sure, they work long hours, and yet instead of working 24/7 like robots, completely burned out, these people had an incredibly productive agenda. Planned time off, spent time with their families, they were frequently exercising in short time frames almost every day, and made sure they stick to their routine as much as possible, including a sleep schedule that enabled them to perform at peak level for many years, decades. Do not underestimate the physical pressure that comes with competitive careers like that. The big money they have, they would use it to employ staff for cleaning, groceries and cooking, and admin tasks, saving them even more productive time they rather spend working on the few high-impact decisions that define their job. Furthermore, they don't seem to leave much room for distractions. When they work, as mentioned, they deploy insane levels of productivity. What top-performing people are getting done in very little time is fairly remarkable. Let's quickly talk about the elephant in the room, and that's an elephant people almost never talk about. Cognitive ability, often referred to as IQ. Of course, IQ isn't everything, and intelligence is more complex than your IQ test performance, that's for sure. Business acumen, intuition, experience, empathy, and leadership. These all play a significant role when it comes to success in any realm. And yet, successfully building, managing, or driving complex business environments requires a certain cognitive ability as well. And the CEOs we mostly hear about, Sundar, Tim Cook, or Elon Musk, are very likely to have a cognitive ability that is way above the average person. What does that mean? It simply means there's a significant difference between the average person working 7, 8, or even 9 productive hours and the Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella working 7 productive hours. The productive hours play a key role for being a success in their position. And even though you cannot magically boost your IQ, you can certainly make use of the productive structure that top CEOs use. The odds of becoming a CEO. Let's get straight to the point here. As for CEOs, what's the most ambitious goal you can think of? Right, becoming a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And that may be rather frustrating from looking at the numbers. The chances of achieving Fortune 500 CEO status are 1 in 135,000. Unless you are a McKinsey consultant, then you're looking at 1 in 690. Fortunately, there are executive careers aside from Fortune 500 firms. In the New York Times article How to Become a CEO, you will find a career calculator on the odds of becoming a senior executive at mid-sized and large firms. You can play with different parameters and the tool would give you a rough percentage. Let's say you're based in New York, have an undergraduate degree from a regular university, no MBA, you're male, and you have 10 years of industry experience. In that case, there's a 29% chance, in case you've held 6 previous job roles. The interesting fact about this is looking at the other extreme. Who has the best chance to become a C-level executive? The answer is men, elite uni graduates with an MBA and 25 years of industry experience have an incredibly high chance of reaching executive status. It's an 87% probability. By the way, females of the same educational track have comparable numbers. It's an 83% chance of becoming a CEO. However, even after having taken all these hurdles, you would still have to outperform most people in your positions, and these are often competitive as hell. Anyway, you're capable and confident. So imagine having successfully completed all those steps, everything that's necessary, and guess what? You're still not the CEO. Why? Well, because the board of directors and the shareholders have to elect you to manage their company as their chief executive officer. Sympathy, performance, rapport, power plays, that's all part of the game. After all, for the vast majority of people, you have to factor in that the odds of running a company like Goldman Sachs or Google are so marginal, in a sense it's almost impossible. And that is more than okay, because it's not a career for everyone. It's little freedom, constant pressure. There's nothing like a playboy lifestyle affiliated to that. Great, but what's in for you? The single biggest takeaway from all the aforementioned data is that you should develop patterns that drive your personal productivity. Play on your strengths more and don't get caught up in misconceptions of what it seems to mean to be a top performer or CEO. They don't have time for theory, motivational quotes or assumptions. They get shit done under any circumstances, in business and even in private life to some extent. Spend more time on exactly figuring out yourself, double down on the tiny habits you're naturally good at to build more momentum. Then adjust your schedule, working and operating standards as much as you possibly can so you end up with a way more productive day. If that means you're getting slightly up later at 9 a.m., then have multiple breaks throughout the day and push until 2 p.m., then do that. Adjust your schedule if that helps to get the most out of your day. No more working long hours for the sake of working long hours. You are now improving the quality of output and efficiency of your overall tasks. Be more aware of what it means to create value, working hard and especially doing it sustainably. We're talking about levels of success that are simply not possible to achieve in short time frames. It takes years and decades to reach and keep success of that dimension, whether it's becoming a CEO or highly successful entrepreneur. Is the CEO position the golden ticket to million-dollar salaries? CEO salaries vary immensely, from as little as $200K a year for small business CEOs, managing directors, to $600K to over $1 million for bigger companies. On a side note, the odds of making that kind of money, you're probably better off as an entrepreneur working for yourself. Coming back to corporate executives, their big bucks are made in Fortune 500 companies. Their biggest earners have millions in base salaries and whopping total compensation packages. To be specific, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon and JP Morgan Chase boss James Dimon both made about $35 million a year lately. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella's 2022 compensation was almost $55 million. Those numbers are so high because we're talking about CEOs of public companies, and most of the compensation comes from stock value, not salary. Satya Nadella has a base salary of $2.5 million a year. Yes, I know, enough to put food on the table. For 2022, you can add a $10 million bonus as well as $42 million in stock award value. That's how we get to a juicy $54 million in one single year. Let all this data sink in, reflect, and get the focus back on what matters, which is you. As mentioned, try to think about how your value work time is spent, not only how much of your time is spent on work. Doubling down on career can be unidimensional, and yet there's some sort of balance, even though it's for the sake of boosting the career. It's an overall alignment towards one goal, and that is excellence. If you design your performance structure and define what it means to be productive doing meaningful work, you will certainly find your way for the thing you desire so much: sustainable peak performance.